1 minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Northwest Liberty News, picking the lock on the shackles of tyranny.
Machines are going to fail, and the system's going to fail.
The past is past, the future's now.
Don't look at me. I think these people are completely nuts.
Sometimes trouble just follows a man.
There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus.
Can't you stop your lips from flapping for 2 little minutes?
It's because I'm white.
I'm a man. I'm sensitive. I need to feel loved. I need to be desired.
I'm rapidly becoming a big underground success in this town.
That's a question of methods. Everybody wants results, but nobody wants to do what they have to do to get them done.
And now, coming to you live from Kalispell, Montana, brought to you by Northwest Liberty News, it's Montana Gazette Radio with your host, James White. Okay, I'm your host, James White. Thanks so much for joining us here in the broadcast on this 9th day of November 2020. And we are coming to you live here from Kalispell, Montana, in the shadow of Glacier National Park. And if everything's working properly, we should be broadcasting on multiple different platforms here. I think there's 7 or 8 platforms now we're broadcasting on. And yes, I do have a Parler account and a Gab account and a BitChute account and all that stuff. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of getting all this material and having the time to put it all up there. And that is why I choose to go live if I can, and then everything gets put out right away. This is Montana Gazette Radio, and again, I'm your host, James White, and we are going to be bringing you some local and national news here coming up in the next, during the broadcast here. We have Ed Butcher, I believe, is going to be calling in here shortly, in about, 10, 12 minutes, and he is going to discuss some things that's on his mind on a call-in, and otherwise we're going to cover some of the late breaking, there's breaking news all the time here coming up these days. First of all, let me start out by saying in my view, and based upon the evidence that I have been able to come across, and my observations, my analysis of the situation, and this is not going to be a revelation probably to most people, but it appears to me as though the recent presidential election has some inconsistencies that need to be looked into, to say the least. Really, right now, we've got a situation where the other side is calling themselves victors, and they are actually appointing people to cabinet positions. And pardon me, the race has not even really been officially called yet by an official capacity. So this is troubling somewhat. I'm understanding now, and we're going to try to hit some of this news when we get to the national news part. But we're seeing now that I believe over 100,000 votes in Georgia now are going to be discounted because of malfeasance. We've seen, if you haven't seen the video of the votes being flipped in real time, I suggest you check that video out. There was and I probably can find it here on Twitter. There was a video that was put out by a security group who went into the back end of the whole voting system, could see the blatant security flaws that were in the system. They could see logs there were messages that kept coming up and saying you're loading more votes in the system than there are registered voters. And even though these errors came up, they just bypassed them and kept going, and all that's in the logs. The video should be fairly easy to find. Well, I take that back. I don't know if it's going to be very easy to find these days because of all the censorship that's been going on. However, it's out there, and I've seen it. There's multiple videos out there, and I don't go to Parler much, but there's multiple videos out there that show the live, the flip, the votes flip. And I want to say it's like 5,000 votes, 5,200 votes go from Trump to Biden. So Biden gains 5,200 votes. Trump loses 5,200 votes in a matter of a second. So what we're being gaslit by the mainstream media. You understand this? This is a giant fraud being perpetrated on the American people. Anybody that has, a room temperature IQ can certainly come to the conclusion that when it comes time to count the votes, and the law states that you're supposed to have people from both parties there to count the vote, and they kick one of the two parties out of the room and count votes in secret. I mean, come on, folks. And then they're walking around having parades and having not parades, but they're having these gatherings with multiple people, not social distancing, having these gatherings with multiple people celebrating the victory for Joe Biden. And it's frankly preposterous to see that happening, but it's going on, and we know that we're going to see here in the end. We're going to see, as I stated before, not in this broadcast but another. When we get down to the end, you're going to see all the turncoats come out. You're going to see all the people that are really, really the deep state, the people that have been some people are going to hold on to the very end before you're going to find out who they are. But they're going to be having to reveal themselves, because it's going to be all hands on deck from the other side here pretty soon, because it's coming down to serious business this week. Now, I haven't had a chance. I had a show this morning. I haven't had a chance to check out the latest news and what's going on specifically here with as far as the election is concerned, as far as the vote count. I do know that I have a page here that I have a lot of the news that comes in. I do know that I believe that there was another batch of votes that came in Arizona, and I believe that was Trump was favored in those, and he's closed the gap there in Arizona. Apparently, the Georgia election, as I stated, had some major discrepancies with a lot of their ballots. That's going to have to be recounted. I think Wisconsin now is going to be recounted. In Michigan, they've already seen some of the voting machines, the software glitches in the voting machines, and they have been able to already reversed, I think in one county, they reversed the decision already that went to a Republican, or went to a Democrat and went back to a Republican. So this is going to be quite a week here, folks, and so there's some people that are in despair over this whole thing, and they're believing what the media is telling you. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't believe what the mainstream media is saying as far as the results are concerned, because they're fraudulent, they're bogus, and they're not accurate, because they haven't been verified by we have a process that goes on in this country that's been going on for a long, long time. And just because the media and those on the left that steal elections routinely want to circumvent that process doesn't mean that that's what we're going to do. That's not lawful. It's not lawful conduct, and we're not going to put up with it. I can tell you that much. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that gets me is the left knows, right? The powers that be, if you will, the people that run things, they understand that they've been caught. You realize, folks, for the con to work effectively, for the con to be able to continue to perpetuate, and for the con to continue to be effective, the people being conned can't know the con. And I've said this on the show before. Once you kind of see the con, it loses all of its effectiveness. It's no longer a con. Then you're nothing but a criminal. Well, you're a criminal anyway. But then the crimes get revealed. You see, here's the thing. They can now. I've said this a couple of times before, at least. It's my contention that without the voter fraud, and again, I point you back to 2006, right here in Montana, John Tester. I had Chris Cortland around the show, sent me the canceled checks of the checks that were written to the tribe members for votes. I submit to you that if it comes out, if they can somehow audit these past elections, I would bet you that the Dems have not won nearly as many of these elections that they claim they've won. Now, one of the things that they showed on this video was that they're able to whitewash the audit trail as well in some of these cases. So really, they can go in there, they can change votes, they can cause their shenanigans, and then they can cover up their tracks, and you can't get in there to find out what they did. You have no audit trail at that point. So they erase it. So they got the system pretty well. They got pretty fine-tuned for scamming. Pretty fine-tuned. Now, here's a couple of things that we've heard here that I cannot confirm, of course, because they don't call me and tell me these things. I understand, I've heard that there's some watermarks that have been put in some of the ballots that have been, that can only valid ballots because they knew. I mean, I think they caught a couple of shipments with tens of thousands of ballots coming in from China that were fake and fraudulent ballots. They also captured tens of thousands of identifications of IDs coming from China for fake IDs. This is a political strategy from the left. This is the cheat and the theft and the stealing and the vote fraud. This is like part of their political strategy. This isn't a one-off. I mean, when you have a network set up, and Joe Biden, I don't know if he's even got all of his faculties, but he comes out and says, and apparently it was a misspeak, but he says they have the most extensive voter fraud network in the country or in history, whatever he said. I'm paraphrasing. But he comes out and says it himself. Now, I don't know if that's something that he heard in a meeting that repeated. I mean, I don't know. Biden, I think a guy's got, a guy's got real mental deficiencies. He's, dementia or whatever. It's sad to see. I hate to see anybody suffer like that. He's a pretty bad guy, I think. So I'm not hurt too hard, but still, I mean, put the guy somewhere and let him live out the rest of his life and probably in prison, probably, because that's where he deserves to go. But my point being, he doesn't deserve to be president. We know this. We can tell this. That's for sure, I think. So what we're having here is we have a situation where all the mainstream media, as you can see, even Fox News, and folks, I said on this show, where I'm a Northwest Liberty News broadcast, months and months, if not over a year ago, Fox News is the gatekeeper for the right. They are the ones that keep the right in line, keep feeding them info, and then it's like rat poison. And I think I've even used this example before. Right? Rat poison, like 98%, is 98% good food. It's the 2% of poison that kills the rat. So Fox News has been feeding the 98%, the 98%, the 98%, and when it really matters most, when everything's on the line, that's when the poison kicks in. That's when that 2% poison kicks in, when they back an illegitimate candidate. That's what's going on, in my view. Let's see if we got Ed here on the line. Not yet. He'll be calling in here in a minute. Senator Ed Butcher, who actually, he and Lonnie Bergstrom are the two gentlemen behind the Legistats website. and the grading system that was very, very effective in the primaries for really, I mean, that's another thing we haven't even talked about is the absolute unbelievable sweep, pretty much, of Republicans here, conservatives, or Republicans. They maybe not all be conservative, but Republicans for sure here in Montana. The red wave did wash over this state, apparently, and all the major statewide races we won. And a lot of those people were on my broadcast, and a lot of the House, and Senate positions we won as well. So we're delighted, actually, to turn things around here in Montana and move it back more towards conservative Montana values. And I'm hoping to play some part in that, although I'm not a legislator. Hopefully I'll have them here on the broadcast. I've actually set up a legislative hotline for legislators to contact me during the legislative session, to contact me directly. So we got that coming. That's going to be good. It's going to be good for Montana Daily Gazette. And check out MontanaDailyGazette.com if you want to see. I just posted an article there about Corey Stapleton, the current Secretary of State, and his basically sent a tweet out with condolences for Donald Trump and congratulating Joe Biden here. And you think as Secretary of State, the man would know that that's not even the legal process. That's not how things should be done. There's the media doesn't pick the winners and losers in a presidential race. That's for sure. I mean, we have to look back now. In a sense, they do. If you think the media companies are behind the polling, they do. In a sense, I guess they have a big influence, and that's another thing that we have to, I think, as we move forward. What's the purpose of polling? Why even do polling? Polling seems to me to be nothing more than a way to discourage whatever side, whatever the opposing side is. It's discourage them to go out and vote and to donate money. And we really have to take a look at polling companies. I mean, you can't, if they're a private business, you don't want to say, hey, you can't run your private business. But I don't know. We have to do something with these polling. This polling is because there's a wrong. First of all, it's ridiculous. And what they do is they sort of gaslight people before the election, and they discourage them. Because if you pick up a newspaper and you work all day, you pick up a newspaper, or you walk by the headlines at your grocery store on the way to the checkout, and you see the local paper that's probably liberal that says that Biden's up by 17 points. That's all you see as you walk by. Boy, you're going to be kind of discouraged. I mean, why were you going to send that donation money in? Are you going to place that vote? Are you going to even have time to go to the booth? That's the whole thing, folks. We have to really, really, really look at the whole entire election process. It's broken. But we have our guest here, Senator Ed Butcher is on. Looks like he's on the line with us, so we're gonna bring Ed on here. Senator Butcher, is that you, sir?
Yeah, I sure am right on board, Jim. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, sir. Thank you. Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me when you're on hold? Before I picked up the phone with you, could you hear my broadcast on your phone?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Good.
Yes, I could.
Good, because I've never been on that end of things. I've never called into my own show, so I don't know. But I appreciate that. All right,
I can hear your articulate voice booming over the telephone.
Well, thank you, sir. Okay, so I kind of gave you a little brief introduction before you came on, Senator. Former Montana Senator Ed Butcher, who is really the driving force, you and Lonnie Bergstrom, behind the Legistats website and the grading system that grades legislators based upon their votes, and you had a really big impact.
Actually, Jim, I'd like to correct one thing.
Yeah.
Lonnie is not involved in this. That thing has been my dog and pony show. Lonnie ran my PowerPoint for me and helped me drive.
Okay, well, there you go.
That was the extent of it.
Right on. No, okay, very good. Thanks for clearing that up. I knew that he had some. I didn't know it was a PowerPoint thing, but yeah, that's your thing. And I know that Travis, your late son Travis, who I had conversations with on the phone. I know you and he were involved in that in the beginning, and you've really had a huge impact on the election, certainly here in the primaries, Senator. And we were.
Well, we got rid of 7 Democrats running as Republicans. So Lou Jones and his bunch of rhinos are short a few of their members.
Indeed they are, my friend.
And we blocked a few that were of the rhinos that were like, there was a couple of them over in your area that was trying to get back in again that Jones was promoting. So hopefully the Montana legislature will become a little less combative, I guess, within the Republican caucus now. Jones had a little bit of his air taken out of his tires.
Well, I hope these guys have enough common sense to realize which way the wind's blowing here. And, we're really, whether you like it or not, folks, it's really the Republican Party is termed, I heard the term now, Trump-publicans. They're Trump-publicans. They're not Republicans. They're Trump-publicans. I mean, there's been nobody that's energized the Republican Party in my lifetime like Donald Trump and got people more involved in politics and more conservatives really up and active. And I don't necessarily agree with every single thing he does, but I don't think I'd want to. I think it's kind of good that I don't agree with everything.
He also gave a lot of unhappy Democrats that weren't happy with the socialists that were controlling the Democratic Party a reason to leave the Democratic Party and begin to recognize that the Republicans are not the billionaire wealthy guys. A lot of them begin to realize that the money is really coming through the Democrat Party now. The Hollywood and the rest of these international billionaires are funding the Democrat Party. The thing has changed from our parents and grandparents' old Roosevelt Democrats. They're no longer in existence. But, I want to give a plug this today while we're talking about this, Jim, to Governor Bullock. I really appreciated the fact that Governor Bullock has provided $150 million in financial stimulus for Montana this past year. He brought all that dark money into the state that that the Democrats keep complaining about. They keep trying to blame the Republicans for being the dark money people. And think of it now. Unfortunately, most of this windfall went into bank accounts of the nationally owned corporate media companies. So maybe a lot of it didn't only a little bit of it dribbled back into Montana itself. But at least a little probably got down to a few locally owned papers and a few small radio stations, and maybe even a few printers around the area got a little bit, and definitely it helped the post office with all anybody that, of course, was getting deluged with all these campaign flyers on that campaign. So,
every day.
I guess we have to give Bullock a little credit.
Yeah, we'll give him a little. We'll give him a little credit. The thing is we're delighted that we don't have to actually see him anymore. Hopefully he'll move.
Well, hopefully not. And one of the things that I've been concerned about, and I've actually written an editorial on it for this week, is the fact that during listening to all these campaign ads, and Bullock was one of the major problems, but they came out with all these total distortions of information and half-truths and a lot of misleading. And as an example, you remember on most of these ads, Bullock was sitting there claiming credit for balancing the state budget during his term as governor. Now, the truth is the governor has very little, if any, control over balancing the state budget because the Montana Constitution requires a balanced budget. The legislature can't adjourn without having a balanced budget for the next biennium. The state can't print money, and so the responsibility to structure that balanced budget is in the legislative budgeting process, not the governor's office. Now, the governor can go ahead and veto a budget if it's presented him to the legislature and he wants more spending, but the legislature in turn can override the governor's veto. So in reality, the governor simply, as well as the other administrative elected officials, the Secretary of State and all of them, they present a proposed budget to the legislature for their agencies. And that's as far as they go. And this is something I think, unfortunately, because our public school system doesn't teach American government, American history anymore, we have an awful lot of naive voters out there that have this misunderstanding that somehow the governor has some effect in balancing a budget. And the Appropriations Committee and the Senate Finance Committee, which I served on when I was in the legislature, they spend the entire legislative session analyzing requests for funding from these various departments and agencies. And the legislature, as a whole, 150 legislators, make the final decision where those tax dollars are going to be spent. Because we have to remember, the budget is tax dollars. And the legislature, of course, has to match whatever government spending they're proposing to anticipated tax revenue, as well as providing for a couple of emergency funds they try to keep funded there for fires and whatever. But these Democrat elected officials tend to present inflated agency budgets with all their pet projects, and the legislature has to make the final decision whether to increase or add new taxes to fund the bureaucracy programs, which would, of course, be required to fit within the constitutional balanced budget requirement. And this is something I really wanted to emphasize, because most of the voters out there just accept that these kind of statements, untruthful statements by people like Bullock, as though they were fact. And I guess as a former political science professor, it really irritates me. Let's put it that way.
No doubt.
Now, what's interesting, Jim, is when you look at this thing, in the last 16 years, which of course we've had Schweitzer and Bullock running the show, and they have increased state spending, in other words, state taxes, from $6 billion a year to $14 billion a year. Now, I want people to put this in perspective, because we really haven't had a significant population increase that would require that extra amount of spending. This is all fluff and stuff and added programs and increased government employees and whatever else that the governor is promoting. And that's what the governor, of course, pushes. Now, the one thing of it is the Republicans, a small faction of them, have to take responsibility, because a number of these, during these sessions, the Republicans actually had a majority in the legislature and allowed this kind of nonsense to continue. Now, in all fairness, the majority of the Republicans in the legislature were trying to hold the budget down. But you had this Lou Jones faction, and they had been continually getting Democrats elected in some of these strong Republican districts. And that was the thing, like over in Sydney, Richland County. They vote 70-80% Republican, and yet they had a Democrat who was in college, was a Obama and organizer and a Democrat student body, Democratic Party organizer. And yet he came back to Montana and claiming he was a Republican. You go down to Dillon in Beaverhead County, all three of their senator and their two representatives, and I've served with those guys down there, they're all Democrats. But they run as Republicans, and then they come back and lie to their constituents how conservative they are.
Well,
in the Flathead, you have Bruce Tudbed as a Class A example. He continually was running out of there as a conservative, and yet he was sitting here pushing all these big spending programs, helping Schweitzer and the boys get these inflated budgets passed.
Well, Ed,
that's something that people.
Let me get your view on something here. Let me get your thoughts on this, because I had multiple candidates on my broadcast. They were getting some people that the donations that were coming in were sometimes from 20. I think one of them had 26 or 27 different states, from people from 27 different states donating here to these local elections. We had some elections, Ed, where there's a handful of people in these towns in Montana. They're pumping like $80, $90, and over $100,000 from outside money into some of these elections, some of these races. There's
bundling.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Senator, that there's a great interest here. I don't know if it's because of the resources, probably, or maybe they just want to infiltrate a red state. But there was a lot of money coming in from out of state this year in this election.
I'll tell you where this really goes, Jim. It goes, the real focus nationally. Most of the people nationally could care less about Montana. There's only 1 million people here. It's not a big deal. you're right, natural resource, they'd like to shut down that development. The liberal left wants to go ahead and elect people in the state that won't develop our oil, gas, coal, timber, and etc., because they want to turn this into a wilderness area. There is that little factor. That's a small group, but the real impetus is to get control of the Senate. You'll notice the only time you get these real excessive amounts of money flowing into Montana is when there is a U.S. Senate position coming up. Because you got to remember, the 2 Montana senators have the same power as the 2 California senators and the 2 New York senators and the 2 Florida and 2 Texas senators. Montana, because the founding fathers in their infinite wisdom, wanted the power to rest with the states. Now, unfortunately, the progressives, the left, 100 years ago, convinced people to pass the 17th Amendment, which went to a direct election of the senators instead of having the state legislators, which the founding fathers originally intended, elect the upper house of Congress. And that we wouldn't have any of this money and any of this political charades going in Montana if they still had that. And of course, people kind of laughed at Jerry O'Neill from over there. You know, he's kind of a libertarian, and he would bring resolutions before the legislature and would, want to repeal the 17th Amendment. And of course, people kind of laughed and chuckled. Most of them didn't understand what he was even talking about because none of them had any political science or government backgrounds. Since our schools don't teach anybody anything anymore. But in reality, that is where this whole socialist and this whole destruction of the capitalist system really originated, was when they did away with the states sending their senators, electing their senators. And of course, it came about because it was in Montana where it started, because you had one of the Copper Kings went and bribed all the senators to get it be sent to the Senate. But instead of just arresting him, firing him, getting rid of him, which he did lose the next election, but instead of doing that, they used that nationally as the impetus to clean up this corruption by going to a direct election. Well, once you go to a direct election of senators, then you've done away with the balance of power and the control of the states, because we have to remember, Jim, we are the United States of America. People don't understand. We are a federation of states. And that's what makes us so unique. This is not a democracy. It's a democratically elected republic. And that's the thing that people don't understand, what makes America so incredibly unique in world history, because there really hasn't been that kind of a structure put together. And it was the genius of the founding fathers. And that was before we had public education. They were all homeschooled. But somehow or other, they had studied world history enough. They understood the great philosophers and the different systems. Very interesting. You probably am getting beyond what you wanted to talk about, but anyway.
No, this is all good stuff. This is what, here's the thing, Ed, the school systems don't teach these type of things any longer, right? They don't want people to be, they don't want people to be thinkers. They want people to be really just
they're controlled
servants.
By socialists, and that's the problem. I mean, I taught high school American government.
Okay.
And when I taught it, I taught a structure of government system. And I also taught a unit in comparative government, comparing the parliamentary systems and the socialist systems of I had England, France, and Russia, I think, Germany were the ones that I taught as comparatives to the high school kids. I gave them an unusual course before I went into teaching college. But this was the type of thing that they don't even bother with it anymore. Most of our high school government teachers are all left-wing Democrats. I mean, it's very difficult to find a Republican school teacher anymore. There are a few out there, but they really keep their heads down because they're in deep trouble in the faculty lounge if they ever admit that they voted for a Republican, let alone somebody like Trump.
No, what you say is correct. Now let me get your viewpoint on this, Senator, about what's going on here with the election. There's been obviously some disruption in the process. It appeared on election night that Donald Trump was moving towards a decisive victory. Some things changed overnight. Some things changed overnight in the sense that the votes switched in a great favor over to Biden, and they stopped really counting the votes at a certain point, and then apparently it looks like there could be evidence that there was some other, some shenanigans going on as far as fake votes being brought in. I wasn't there. I think there's going to be a subsequent investigation into all of it, and hopefully it all shakes out. What's your thoughts on what's going on here? This is something that I don't think anybody that's alive has ever seen before in this country. Go ahead.
Jim, this isn't anything new. If you go back to previous elections, it's like when we had that gutless Romney running as a Republican. And, of course, he's really a Democrat. Came out of Massachusetts. He born to a very wealthy family. But what was interesting is there was one in Philadelphia again, which is where the problems are now. There was one big precinct that came in, and there was not one vote for Romney. They were all 100% votes for Obama. Now, statistically, that's impossible to happen. I mean, there's going to be someone with a low IQ that is in there voting that screws up and hits the wrong button. I mean, it's just not possible. You might get 95% or 90% one way or the other, but it's not possible to get 100%. And then there's been over the years, and apparently it's indicated now, you get cases where 110, 105% of the registered voters vote.
Right.
Right now there's some comment that I've seen that in some of these elections, of the total age voting population, there's 95 to 100% of them all voted. Now, is that possible? Well, maybe.
Well, there's some people that were born during the Civil War, Ed. There's some people that were born during the Civil War that's voted. Do you think that's possible? What do you think? I know that there's some great life extension.
I know there's some older folks around, and I know that some of these guys are probably taking some good health supplements that may have got them going, but so far I haven't heard of anybody beyond about 110 years of age.
Yeah, they're not 160.
It's a little bit questionable on some of that.
They're not 160 years old, I can guarantee you that much. And there's been people that have been found that are underage, that are like 14-year-olds. Here's the thing. In my view, and there's a video that came out that showed from some security, some internet security guys that found the software, got into the back end and everything, and looked at all the log files. This has been going on for a long time, Ed. This is something you don't put together in a year or two. I got a feeling that you remember back in 2006, I touched on this before. Do you remember back in 2006, John Tester was running for Senate, and they actually the checks turned up. I'm not sure if you saw them then, but I put them on my show. $40 checks for votes that were from the Democrat Party that were given to the people on the reservation down there for votes. And a guy that was on the reservation kept cashing the checks, Chris Cortlander, and kept going, "Why are these $40 checks coming in?" And someone says, "Well, it's the votes. We're getting paid for votes." I've actually seen copies of those checks. Me too.
Personally, you're 100% right. That was going on down there. Well, it's a problem whether you're in Philadelphia ghettos or whether you're in unfortunately the Native American ghettos. When you've got free money out there and you've got a concentrated group, and especially if they're convinced that the Democrat Party is going to keep their welfare going, otherwise they'll cut off if they don't vote for them. And then you get ballot harvesters, and that's been going on forever in Montana on the reservations, where they're going in and harvesting ballots. And they also have, I know one Native American, I won't even go on what reservation because it would get too personal to them, but I know it was told by one that they actually were registering them in their Indian name and their Anglo name because they got Indian ID. And so whether they bothered checking it on a reservation, because, when Schweitzer was governor, he went and bragged before and it's on tape, I heard the tape, before the National Trial Lawyers Association, he pulled the Biden stunt where he went and was bragging about how he went in there and threatened to run the Republican poll watchers and have them arrested for parking violations and throw them in jail if they didn't leave the reservation. So, there's problems there, and unfortunately, the Native Americans are being taken advantage of.
Sure they are.
And there's going to be more and more of them recognize that. And it's like natural resource development. There's a real split in the Native American groups now because down in the Crow Reservation, there's Not Afraid down there who's a tribal leader. I met him. He's a really incredibly sharp young man. And he's standing his ground wanting to develop natural resources down there. He's not going along with the internationalists who want to shut down coal and all the rest of the stuff. And he's been supporting Republican candidates that want.
You mean AJ Not Afraid? AJ Not Afraid?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, I had
Very sharp guy.
Yeah, Chief Not Afraid was on my broadcast here. I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so, a month ago. Yeah, talking about all that stuff. Yeah, he's. You're right. He is. As a matter of fact, I want to get him back on the show again to talk about this. Now, on
the reservation, there are some incredibly sharp. I've served with several. I served with several of the Indian legislators, like some of the other legislators were dumber than a post. But there was also several of them that were incredibly sharp legislators. The problem is they're caught in a system down there that they have to vote for a lot of these spending programs because that's what the reservation is living on. I was actually appointed I served for 2 sessions when I was in the Senate on the Tribal State Relations Committee, which when I was appointed to it, I asked the President of the Senate, you want me on this one? He says, well, yeah, you're the only one that would go in there and actually ask the right questions and actually find out what's going on in this whole issue, conflicts between the reservation and the state. And I said, gee, now I know how Custer felt. Now that isn't a racist remark; it's just a statement of history.
Sure. Well, what we're going to do here on this broadcast, Ed, is what we're going to have legislators on here leading up to the legislative session to talk about some of the programs that they're interested in. Kicking off with Commissioner Randy Pinocchio will be a guest here on Wednesday, and we're going to take some calls. We're going to have a 2-hour broadcast on Wednesday with Commissioner Pinocchio, and we'll open up the phone lines. But he's got some ideas about how he wants to see things go. We've got finally here, Senator. We have the con, as they say in the let's say the submarine language. We've got the helm. We've got control of the ship right now, so we can really make some serious changes here right now with the. I mean, it was a referendum as far as I'm concerned for conservative values and Republican candidates with the sweeping, especially in Great Falls. I think Republican won every single. Every
contested race, every contested race in Great Falls is won by a Republican.
That's unheard of.
Well, what's happened is those old Democrats there have realized that they've been getting conned by the labor unions pushing these socialist ideas. They all of a sudden have woke up. I was raised a Democrat. I was a Democrat most of my life. In fact, I was very active in the Democratic Party until I suddenly sat back and realized that the socialists and the communists had taken over the Democratic Party. It's a fact. I mean, all you have to do is look at what their OCA or whatever her name is,
AOC,
crazy woman out of New York, is the leader of this pack, that squad as they call them. I mean, these are pure communist socialists.
Do you know she came out? She came out and said, "I don't want to have a reconciliation. I don't want to find a middle ground. We want to charge forward with our socialist agenda. A reconciliation or compromise be damned. We're going to move forward with our plan." I think they're on the losing side of history, Ed. I think that this republic is pretty solid in a lot of ways, and it's not. We're not going to let 4 socialists roll in. I don't care where they're from and take over this country. It's just not going to happen. This isn't the first time that the election's been assaulted. I think that and I'm not certainly don't have a background like you have in teaching history, but from what I can gather, we've faced in our country, we have faced this or worse attacks on our way of life before. This isn't even the worst that we've actually had to endure as a nation in our 200 and how many years? 240 something years.
Well, all you have to do is go back to Thomas Jefferson, and if you actually study the media attacks on Jefferson when he was running for president, it was every bit as vicious as Trump ran into. But the thing of it is, Jefferson had the support of the people because they understood what was at stake, and they supported him as he was because he was representing the of course, America at that time was an agricultural country, but he was representing the average folks out there, and not with a socialist view. It was his whole idea was to have individual freedom and individual liberty with very little central government. And that's the thing where the Democrats should not be claiming Thomas Jefferson as their founder, because they've changed the party now. Alexander Hamilton is the one they should be counting historically as their founder, because he was the one that wanted big centralized government. He was actually in favor of a monarch being in there, but it gets centralized authority, where Jefferson wanted and Madison and Monroe, the rest of those Jeffersonians wanted to have the states, most of the power reside in the states, and you see this in the Constitution. They only are given, the federal government technically and legally only has the authority that's been delegated to it in the Constitution. And of course, in those days, the courts were not, they were considered a very weak third party. They were just set to settle disputes between states and etc. They weren't supposed to be legislated, and that was the thing that Trump has finally given us, our Supreme Court judges and hopefully other judicial judges who will look at as staying within the Constitution and simply settling issues and not legislating and expanding the authority that's supposed to rest with the legislative branch of the government.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Judicial activism right now, Ed, is at its zenith. I don't think it's been any worse.
Well, Montana's terrible.
Oh, man.
We unfortunately, in Montana, we leave our judges independent, and the lawyer guild is the one that controls who gets to run for Supreme Court judge. Or Supreme Court judge. I mean, you've got the most radical left-wingers set in the majority on the state Supreme Court, starting with the Chief Justice.
No, right on.
I mean, these guys are all socialists. And unfortunately, that's one of the problems that voters, I get a lot of calls from my constituents because they're all confused over which judges are conservative and which ones aren't. And it's very difficult to know because most of them keep a pretty low profile, because if they're going to appear before the Supreme Court, they can't be identified as being they can't be identified as being artwitting. Let's put it that way.
No, I agree. Let me ask you something here. Let me ask you something, Ed. What do you think? Give me three things that you think coming up here in the 2021 legislative session. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. I know you probably don't sit around thinking about these things. Maybe you do. What three things would you like to see, or more, would you like to see the legislative body tackle here coming up in the 2021 legislative session? What in your mind is some of the key things that we have to, either get under control, alter, change, make better, improve? What's your thoughts on all that, Ed?
Well, I think one thing that needs to be done is this Political Practice Commission has to be changed. It should be modeled more after the National Political Practice Commission, because right now it's become a hatchet man for the Democrat governors. They harass anybody who tries to speak out or do anything in support of candidates. Immediately, you got to come under a political pack and etc. They really infringe on individual freedom rights. And what needs to be done in a lot of the states, and the federal commission is set up where the two Democrats and two Republicans are appointed on a commission to review illegal campaign activities. And if they actually come to an agreement, a majority of them vote for it, then they investigate and prosecute. Right now, you have a Political Practice Commission who is nothing more than a political hack appointed by the governor, and they've had some real doozies. Schweitzer had two or three of them. I mean, the head of the FL-CIO, the head of he came in as a one of those left-wing advocacy groups. I'm trying to remember which one it was now. Anyway, he was in there and just harassing any conservatives. Now, they didn't pay much attention to the liberals, but any conservatives, quote-unquote, going after dark money. They're always going after dark money.
Hey.
And as I mentioned earlier on, who brought the most dark money into the state this year? It was Bullock.
Well, let me ask you this, Ed.
Sitting there ranting and railing about dark money.
As a follow-up, I had you on the broadcast here.
Go ahead.
As a follow-up, I had you on the broadcast here about 3 months ago or so, I think, 2 or 3 months ago, and they had sent you a letter, I think, from OPP. Are you at
I'm
liberty
in federal court right now.
Okay, can you discuss that at all?
I'm in federal. I'm actually filed a federal court action on First Amendment rights because they tried to shut me down when I was doing my presentations around the state, educating people on the voting records of their legislators, and so. One of the rhinos went ahead and filed a complaint. Political Practice Commission. They're coming after us. The way Political Practice Commissioner, he goes ahead, decides who to investigate. He then decides what he's going to charge you with. He charges you, and then he also levies the fines. And I mean, I've known people they've tried to fine $600,000-$700,000 for simply exercising their First Amendment rights.
So that's judge, jury, and executioner.
Beat that down, but it cost them a lot of money. And of course, one of the guys they ran out of politics was Art Whittick.
Yeah.
He's a classic example. Art was too outspoken, and so they went after him, and on minor trivia, they went ahead and just hammered him out, and he wound up, it cost him probably, I'd guess it cost him close to $100,000 by the time he got done fighting them. But there was no way to win the thing, because the commissioner is a judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, right.
And this is what's wrong with political practice. They need to reform that like most states have it, and like the Federal Political Practice Commission is set up, like I said earlier.
Well, this is...
Another thing that we really should have that I would like to see, or a second point, is I think that we need in Montana to go ahead and set up a deal where all elections the winner has to get at least 50% of the vote. And if they don't, then you have a runoff. I mean, this is where a lot of these states, like down south, Louisiana, Georgia, obviously, there's a bunch of these states that have that already there, that they have a runoff election. And it should be on everything. I mean, all candidates, because what's happened is the Democrats are coming in with all of this money primarily. There's a little bit, Republicans have been trying to do it, but they're too unorganized to pull it off. But the Democrats, since the unions are basically run them, they're a very structured, very organized group. And so they bring in for one thing, they encourage libertarians to run, and the libertarians always split the Republican vote. Usually somewhere between 5 and 10% of the vote in a given race the conservative vote will be filtered off by libertarians. And that's fine. They bring a lot of ideas and such too. There's nothing wrong with them being there. The trouble is they guarantee minority elections of people with 30 or 40% of the vote wind up getting elected. And yet if you had the top two then run off in a runoff, then the voters would have to decide on which one would be the best of the candidates to put in. Because we've had, all you have to do is look back recently. Rick Hill would have been governor if this had been in place. Zinke probably wouldn't have been the congressman if he'd run, because they were all people that were less than 30. Well, some of them are down 30-some percent because you get 5 or 6 people splitting the vote. So they are very much of a minority candidate that came in, and then of course the Democrats obviously will come in with the Libertarians in the third party in a general election and siphon enough votes off to get it. Now, this time they didn't. It's like every year you have these of course, this is, again, dark money coming in, but you have this, what is it they call themselves, the Hunters and Anglers Coalition or something like that. It only materializes in usually a U.S. Senate race, and all of a sudden Montana Hunters and Anglers come in with these big attack ads against a Republican, whoever it is. That's what beat Rehberg. Again, you had a third party in there, and you had these heavy attack ads coming in on them. The Montana Rural Voters, this is another phony group that comes in. They're all Democrat front groups that are being funded to bring in dark money to attack the Republicans. Republicans are trying to counter this a little bit, but they're not very good at it.
Well, you know what I'd like to see, Ed? I would like to see the ability for Democrats to cross over during the primaries. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that ended. I'd like to see them not be able to do that.
Well, this is where the runoff. First of all, this is where you need a closed primary. I don't think the people are ready for a closed primary yet, but the primary election is supposed to be for each party to pick their best candidate to then run in the general election. And, of course, you got all these people the Democrats immediately stir up all the people who consider themselves independents, and they start screaming about, I should have a right to vote. Well, no, if you're not going to support a Republican or a Democrat, your job is to, if you want to be an independent, then, and you can support your Libertarian if he's got it on the ballot, if they've got a contest. But if you're an independent, then you get your vote in the general election. You don't have the right to come in. You're right. This is what has been a real problem in Montana. I usually won about 60% of the vote in my legislative district, but the unions organized big crossovers in a couple of my elections where they lined up a real well-known Republican family member who was a rhino, and he ran against me, and they got within 40 votes on one of the primaries to defeat me. Just simply, and it was a well-organized, they obviously were well-organized, had money, they filed at the last minute and were ready to roll. But it was an effort, and they told their people, because I have friends in the Democratic Party yet, from my old days when I was a big-time active Democrat, and they were filling me in on what was going on. And the unions had come down and told their members, and of course public employees unions, which is basically a teachers union, is a very powerful group, and they said, don't worry about the rest of the elections. It was myself and one other Republican that they wanted in the state to get rid of in the legislature because we were an irritation to them. And so they told their members, we don't care about it, cross over and vote. And so they crossed over and got within 40 votes of beating me in the primary, when normally in a general election I pick up, somewhere close to around 60% of the vote. So, this is the kind of thing, I've seen it firsthand, and of course it made me campaign like heck. I had to door-to-door, when I'm in the largest legislative district in the state, you're talking hundreds of miles of campaigning you have to do. I mean, I just had to sit down, and that election, I had to cancel all my business appointments I was supposed to be doing, and I wound up going ahead and just living in the car, campaigning door-to-door, because I was determined they weren't going to beat me. And I went down and met the folks out there, and of course, because it was a Republican primary, the Country Club Republicans, i.e. the rhinos, they didn't want me either because I'm obviously a little too outspoken for them. I'm too conservative.
Well,
and so I was picking up a lot of, the independent, the Democrats that were crossing over, they were conservative. Well, what I did in that election is there was a fellow who was a Ron Paul libertarian. He was actually a Democrat. His family were strong Democrats. And so he decided to go ahead, and I told him what my problem was when I realized what they were doing. And he had me in the group there, and he says, I think I'll go ahead and run as a Democrat. And he had a well-known name, and so he ran as a Democrat. And the Democrats had picked a very, very qualified guy as far as a union Democrat. The guy was, well-spoken, well-educated, a very nice fellow. Wasn't really interested in politics, but the unions told him, you're going to run, we'll get you elected, just don't say anything. So basically that's what they tried to run. And it was interesting election because this guy went in and ran as a Ron Paul libertarian conservative, and he didn't pull any punches. I mean, he laid out exactly those libertarian positions he wanted. Well, what was interesting is he held enough Democrats in there. That was the one where I only won by 40 votes. He held enough over there that's what actually guaranteed me that election, because he held enough Democrats there. And he actually beat the hand-picked Union Democrat, who again was a well-liked, well-known guy, but he actually carried it because there were these conservative Democrats that didn't want to vote for a Republican because they've been told since birth that lightning would strike them dead if they ever voted for Republican. And that's what you see changing now, like in Great Falls. All of us, that's an old Democrat stronghold. But those Democrats there are suddenly waking up and realizing we can't let the country go to hell. They're patriots first and Democrats second.
Well,
and they're becoming less and less Democrat as the Democrat Party becomes more socialist.
Well, Ed, I think I don't know if we plan on going on this long. It was great to have you on here, but we're gonna wind down here the interview. But I want to give you a chance to give out your websites at Legistats. It's legistats.com, right? Legistats.com. Is that correct?
Actually, the easiest way to get to the thing is to go to legislatorloyalty.com.
Legislator loyalty.
Loyalty, one word. gazette.com.
Okay. And then explain to the folks when they go there, what are they going to find when they go to
What they find there is a computerized analysis of every vote that's cast in the Montana legislature. There's a Senate side and a House side. And you can go back to 2005. And what it does is it shows every time you have a partisan bill, and a partisan bill is defined as one where 50% or more of the Democrats vote one way and 50% or more of the Republicans vote the other way. Then they can go in and see who crossed over to support which Republicans crossed over and supported the Democrats. And this was a presentation I actually did like a college seminar when I traveled around eastern Montana and was showing these people. And the voters were absolutely shocked at some of their legislators. They thought they were endorsed by the Farm Bureau and the Stock Growers and the Family Foundation and everything else. Well, they were only endorsing them on 10, 15 votes out of the 800. And the rest of them, they were all helping Bullock get all these big spending bills through. And that was also in the Bitterroot. I mean, that one Bitterroot that was probably very major in defeating Nancy Balance over there when Manzella won that race, because Nancy Balance had gone to the dark side and was lieutenant for Lou Jones and the Democrats.
Gone to the dark side.
With all of that happening, that's why this and you go in there and actually click on the individual. You can pull up every vote he makes on every bill. You can go back and click and find how the committees vote on the bill, how everybody else voted on the bill, and you can actually click on the bill itself and pull it up and read it and see if you agree with the way they voted. I mean, it's as transparent as you'll ever get.
No, it's great. It's great. It's a great site. It's a great site. And you had a major impact on this primary here in June, I think it was. Yeah, you had a major impact. Legistats had a major impact on that election.
We've got to educate the voters. That's the important thing. Is people are hungry. This is what I found. I mean, when you go into eastern Montana, these rural counties, you get 40 to 60 people show up to sit for an hour's presentation on basically a college presentation. I did like I would my college class, just showing the voting records. And I was exposing the voting records of their legislators. And there was one time, in one case, they turned and looked at the register who was sitting there in the room. They said, "You did what?" I still remember this one legislator voted. He was the only Republican that voted to go with the Democrats to kill babies that survive an abortion. And anyway, and the people in the room were absolutely shocked. I can explain later. Needless to say, he got defeated.
Well, Ed, I think we're going to be featuring your weekly articles there on Montana Daily Gazette, and we'll not sure how we're going to do it yet. If we're going to create a space for you or just publish it there on the front page, but we're going to, if you want to read Senator Ed Butcher's commentaries, I believe you're going to be able to find them there. And when we get it all up there and get a link and everything, we'll send it out to you, Senator. We so much appreciate you joining us.
That sounds great.
Yeah, we appreciate.
You guys are providing a tremendous service where you've connected up with Jordan and tying together this Montana Gazette along with your Northwest Liberty. You guys are going to provide the voters in Montana with an outside source beyond the corporate papers that really I've quit subscribing to the corporate papers. They're a total waste of money.
Well, we're just going to try to put out truth here the best that we can, and based upon the information that we have at the time. Are we going to always be right 100% of the time? Nope, we're not, because we're all human beings around here. So I mean, we are going to make mistakes. But they're going to be honest mistakes. They're not going to be mistakes because they're trying to fool someone, trick someone, gaslight someone, or try to influence. I mean, we are certainly going to try to influence people, but it's going to be more towards constitutional conservative values, not this radical communist socialist mantra that comes from the other side. Ed, that has to be put down. That like a rabid dog, that has to be put down in this country. Completely. There's going to be no more of this socialist communist stuff going on. It needs to all be put down. It needs to be put down fast. That's what I think. Any closing comments?
People need to understand what the country was founded on. And I think you guys are going to provide a tremendous service to the state.
Well, we're going to do it with guys like you, Ed, that calls in on the show and writes guest articles and provides us with information. I'll have a news hotline here that I'm going to give out to newsmakers and legislators and stuff here in Montana. And when I get those, I have business cards. I should be arriving here soon. I'll send you a copy, though. I'll send you a business card. So it'll be a hotline right for legislators. They can get directly to me with breaking news here for Montana Daily Gazette and Northwest Liberty News. Ed Butcher, legislator loyalty.
You'll be able to attract a lot smarter guys than me. So that's the one thing. As you continue to grow and develop, you'll find some really sharp people to add information into your website or into your papers and your presentations.
Well, I just appreciate what you do, Ed, and all the work you do at Legislator at Legislator Loyalty or Legistats. And thanks so much. We look forward to having you here on the broadcast again.
Take care.
Thanks, Ed. You too, buddy. Take care. Okay, folks, there goes Ed Butcher, Senator Ed Butcher. He called in to talk about this the article that he wrote, and we ended up going on here for I don't know, almost an hour, and that's okay. We are certainly appreciate Senator Butcher and all his work, and we're delighted to have him on the show. We're going to take a quick commercial break here back on the other side, cover some news and information. This is Montana Gazette Radio. I am James White, your host. I'll be back after these brief messages. If you like classic cars, exceptional service, and a money-back guarantee, then the Corner Shop in beautiful downtown Kalispell is the place for you. Whether it's an oil change, engine diagnostic, suspension work, or brakes all around, the Corner Shop has you covered. With expert technicians and a free consultation on all services, you can't go wrong with the Corner Shop. Did I mention the classic cars? While you're waiting for your expert service to be performed, take a stroll through the showroom to see Kalispell's smoothest collection of classic cars. The Corner Shop is conveniently located at 1212 South Main, just south of the courthouse. The Corner Shop is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., so drop by for an appointment or call 755-7777. That's 755-7777. The Corner Shop, Kalispell's full-service auto repair facility.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Legacy and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
Okay, folks, you can go to PatriotPrepared.com if you'd like to fulfill all of your storable food needs, camping supplies, that type of thing. You can support this broadcast by doing that as well, by going to PatriotPrepared.com. That's PatriotPrepared.com. And if you're in the Kalispell area and you're looking to get your car repaired, I would highly suggest that you visit the guys over there at the Corner Shop. Dan Korn and his team over there, a great bunch of guys. They've done a lot of work on my car, sadly. And they always do a good job, and I always appreciate their work, and that's why they're a sponsor here of the show. So check them out there at thecornershop.com, or the Corner Shop, thecornershop.net, spelled with a K. And I think it's on I'm trying to answer a tweet here. It's on the commercial. My name is James White. This is Montana Gazette Radio. Thanks for joining us here on the 9th day of November. Let me reset here a little bit. We just had Senator Ed Butcher on the line talking about some of the things he's got going on, and we have a great opportunity here in the Flathead, in the state of Montana, to actually get some things that conservatives have been looking forward to for a long time. We have a real chance to make some serious sweeping changes here in Montana, and sweeping changes are good. When for the last, I don't know how many years, it's all been moving towards the left. So we need to reverse that. And interesting, one of the things I think that's going to affect Montana for sure is I believe it was some sort of a consortium, environmental consortium. I don't know. They were studying the fires, and they said that they maybe have made a mistake over the last 20 years. Maybe they should have allowed and not given so much pushback on clearing out dead wood in the forests, so it's not matchsticks laying on the bottom of the forest floor that go up and create these just outrageous fires, certainly out west, that just destroy millions and millions of acres, destroy people's lives, livestock, burns up their homes, their vehicles. As I said, many lives are lost. About every year you find, I don't think this year I haven't heard of it, thank God, but about every year you hear about firefighters that go into these battles, and they don't make it out. They don't make it out. And, thank God that hasn't happened. I don't think this year, at least I haven't heard. Sometimes these whole troops of these guys go in there and they don't come out. I don't know if they're called the regiments or battalions. I don't know what they call them, for squads. And anyway, sometimes an entire lot of them gets wiped out. I mean, there's, you want to talk about heroes, folks. You want to talk about heroes. You got people like firemen that rush into burning buildings when other people are rushing out. These people are the real heroes, right? It's not these Cardi B and all these rappers and these people that you see in Hollywood, which you haven't seen many of those people around. And that's my question. I asked, let me type this. Let me type this over here. The question is, where are all these, has anybody wondered where the people that, all of these celebrities that always come out and talk about the politics? I mean, Oprah, right? I haven't heard hardly anything from her. Where's Will Smith? Where's Madonna? Where is Ellen? Where's Beyonce? Where are all these people coming out? There's usually around an election, these people they're yapping 20, they're on every commercial. Where are these people? Where's Hanks? Where's Tom Hanks? Anybody seen Tom Hanks? How come Tom Hanks isn't out talking about the election and the fraud and everything? Where are these people? Anybody wonder what's going on with these people from Hollywood? Anybody wonder? I do. I wonder how these people are usually always out in front. They're having these big extravaganzas where they're inviting, half the stars in the music industry to these concerts for the Dems and registering voters while they're there. Where's all that happening? I haven't seen it. I wonder. Their silence is deafening to me. What happened to them? I don't know. I mean, there's been some speculations. I don't know. I'm not there. But I believe that we're going to find out. I think that we're on the cusp of, folks, this is not about a presidential election here. This battle that we're having here with these voters and everything. Oh no, it's way, way so much deeper than that on so many more levels. What you're seeing played out here right in front of us, in my opinion, is literally the battle for the soul of this nation and for the direction of this nation for a decade, for a century, I should say, perhaps, or more. I've said this on my other show numerous times. We're at a crossroads here. We really are. There's two paths ahead of us as a nation. The one path leads to freedom and liberty. The other path leads to the deepest, darkest tyranny than we can possibly imagine. And we're going to cover some of this stuff here. They're already creating lists of people that were Trump supporters that when they regain power again, they're going to come after. This is publicly stated by numerous people that they don't want any reconciliation with us. No. They want to eliminate us so this never happens to them again. Their power is never challenged ever again. That's the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. Sadly, they have taken over the Democrat Party. If you've seen any of the latest videos of the BLM peaceful rallies, if you've seen any of the BLM riots on TV recently, you see now they're going F Joe Biden. Now he's not radical enough. AOC comes out and says, we're not interested in the moderate wing of the Democrat Party. We only want the radical wing. And I'm paraphrasing her, what she's saying. But the mere thought that when you see the Democrats supporting all of the rioting and the fires and the burning and even in encouraging it, to think that their representative actually got 74 million votes or whatever they say. Come on, folks. Even the most diehard liberal. I mean, does liberal mean that you don't care about truth and you just want to be fooled? Does that what happens when you're a liberal? You just being fooled and being snookered and tricked is okay with you? I mean, are you that loyal? Are you that loyal to the party where you can be lied to and tricked and snookered? Think about it. What happens to countries when the rule of law and the fair and honest election concept breaks down and doesn't exist? What happens in these nations, folks? Have you taken any? Even I should have asked Ed Butcher, our last guest, about that. We don't have to ask him. I can tell you, they fall apart. They destruct. They devolve into tyranny and tyrannical rule, and a small group of people get to power at the top. And they use their power and the police to subjugate the rest of the people in the country. This is not like a new plan. This isn't something that I just figured out. This is the way that their process works, and they've done it numerous times. And the reason that they keep doing it is because it's successful. That's why. And this is what they're trying to do right now. What they're trying to do is they're trying to overwhelm people and confuse people. They're trying to discourage people. Okay? They know, we know, all the talking heads on the TV know. Maybe not these mindless idiots that are in the street, but majority of the people that have above room temperature IQ understands that this election is in dispute right now, and it has not been concluded or determined in any way, shape, or form. We all know this. Regardless of that, they continue to move forward to perpetuate the fantasy and the fraud that it's over. This is an attempt to demoralize Trump's base. This is an attempt to turn people's loyalty and their the group of people that's got behind President Trump. It's designed to discourage them and to. Now that you've heard him now, I've even people that I know that are friends of mine. Well, I tell you, I don't know what we're going to do if Biden becomes president. You know, where's your fight? We got to stand up and fight, right? We cannot let these people take over. It is that important, folks. Do you know, I've said this before on the show, for a guy like me, it's a life and death battle. I poke my thumb in their eye on thousands of occasions. I've been broadcasting for years. I've done thousands of shows, interviewed thousands of guests. And there's been people out there that have done way more than me. But you don't think you're going to let a guy like me who comes on to my other show and points out the fact that their child trafficking network, CPS, across the country is nothing but a money laundering child trafficking cabal. You don't think I've come and said that and interviewed hundreds of parents that have verified that fact. You don't think you're just going to let me quietly turn my microphone off and go back to normal civilian life, do you? Oh, no. No way. Not if these people get in power. Come on. I've got a Donald Trump poster over my shoulder here that's been on hundreds of video presentations now. Hundreds of videos and shows that I've done. This is not, this is a life and death battle for me. In my mind, it's a life and death battle for me because they've already stated they want to crush anybody that went against them. I mean, I can show you the folks. I mean, if you don't know, don't believe me. Don't believe me. Don't believe a word I say. Go look it up. You could see it yourself. Pardon me. This is what they're saying. So I don't believe that President Trump is going to concede. I think the reports that Melania is asking him to concede, people, his children are asking him to concede. I believe all this is lies. I believe this is all lies and disinformation. I don't believe any of it's true. It's all meant, again, to discourage you. This is the goal, to discourage you if you're conservative, to keep you from supporting Donald Trump. We're not going to buy those shenanigans here on this broadcast, and we certainly hope you don't either. So let me hit some of these things here. There we go. It worked. So we covered some things here in the Montana Daily Gazette paper. If you haven't checked it out, go to montanadailygazette.com. That's montanadailygazette.com. We're going to go over some of the recent headlines here. It's been a while since I have a broadcast. I had some oral surgery last week that put me out of commission for a few days there, as you can tell. And it's just now actually getting healed up again. So that's why I wasn't on the show last week. But as I said, that's getting better now. So we're moving forward. Catching up on some of this old news. Red Wave, Montana. Republicans win every single federal and statewide office. We covered this a little bit previously with our previous guest, Ed Butcher. But this is not new news, but we know Greg Gianforte won, Matt Rosendale won, Steve Daines won, Austin Knudsen won. Really good guy, Austin Knudsen. Not that all these other people aren't. Troy Downing won, Elsie Arnson won, Chrissy Jacobson won. Most of these people have been on my show. A lot of them have. And Braxton Mitchell, who we've had on numerous times. Braxton Mitchell, he's 20 years old. And we got 18-year-old Mallory Stromswald, who I tried to get on the show but couldn't bring her up. I couldn't get her on the line. They're all victors. They've all won this primary here. It's just about a week ago now. This is a really good thing. And as I've told people numerous times, I said we are about to have a big wave, a red wave here in Montana. And it's going to be, I think things are going to get way better here. Not that it's like a terrible place to live now, but I don't want them killing babies and selling body parts out of Montana. And I don't think people, folks, you can't kill the offspring of your species before they're born. You can say, oh, I don't care what you say. I don't care. Call me whatever you want. You can call me any name you want to. Believe me, you won't be the first one to call me that. And there's many that have done it. So you send me mail, call me names. It really doesn't matter. I'm unabashedly against killing unborn children. I'm against gay marriage. I'm against these library time story hours. I'm against all that stuff. I'm against all that stuff that really erodes the moral fabric of our society. And that's really the goal of what the left wants to do. They want to erode. They don't like the nuclear family. No, they don't like that. They don't like Christians, especially. And a Christian nuclear family? Oh boy. Boy, I tell you, kidding me? That's almost the top rung of evil right there. It's the battle of good and evil, folks. You've heard it before if you've had any type of a biblical background, and I'm not a pastor, minister, don't claim to be one, not claiming to be one now. All I know is you've heard the biblical verse about this being a battle between good and evil. This is a spiritual battle. We don't battle against flesh and blood, but against evil, wickedness and evil and principalities in high places. And that's not exactly the verse, but it's basically, I think it's Ephesians, book of Ephesians. I have to look it up. But the point is this is not a, Bullock and Gray Bill and, Catherine Williams and all the people that were running. Sure, they're actual people, of course. We know they're human forms, they're biological forms, but that's not really, we're battling against them, but we're battling against something bigger. That's why I was saying before with this whole election thing with President Trump. This is not just about President Trump. This is about a much, much deeper issue. This is you can't see this, folks. This is their final play for world domination. That's what they've always wanted. They've always wanted world domination. You look at Agenda 21, you look at Agenda 2030, you look at all of the stuff that they've done with the United Nations, that included and other stuff. Biodiversity, you've seen the chemtrails. I've done numerous broadcasts on them. the way that they've usurped the whole legal system. We just talked about judicial activism here previously, right? Everything's incorporated. Everything's incorporated. Pretty much your township, your county, your state, the federal government. They've been able to masterfully take things that we should be able to do naturally, and they've inserted themselves between what God intended for us. They've inserted themselves right in the middle of that, and prohibited us from enjoying the benefits and the bounties that God created for us. And I'm speaking specifically, and I've talked about it on this show a dozen times, and I'm going to continue to bring it up, about permitting. God created the fish and created the animals for us. Yet the government comes in and permits it and says you can't fish or you can't hunt unless you get permission from us, the government. And of course, that's going to come with a fee. And if we catch you without this permit, then it's going to become a fine. Did the government create the fish? Did they create the elk? Did the government create them? Nope, sure didn't. God created them. Why is the government even involved in the transaction is what I want to know. Why is the government even involved in the transaction of me going and taking a fishing pole and putting a lure on a line, throwing it in the water, and catching myself a fish for dinner? Why do I have to get a permit from the government to do that? Permit means permission. Do you see how they've taken over everything? Slowly, it's incrementalism. It's called incrementalism. They know they can't come out and they can't do everything at once because people would be outraged. They'd be up in arms. So what do? They have a 30-year plan or a 40-year plan or a 50-year plan that's incrementally brought into place, a little bit at a time. So it's not so shocking to the average person. And then pretty soon it becomes normal, and then no one even thinks twice about it. Look at the gay marriage thing, for example. Back in the early 70s, you couldn't come out of the closet. I mean, they were giving homosexuals beatdowns and you know, which I don't agree with. I mean, there's no reason to harm someone for what they believe in. I don't agree with them, but it doesn't mean they need to be harmed or beaten. I mean, this is not between them and me. This is between them and God. There's no reason for me to even get involved. Just don't push whatever you believe in. You know, you're welcome to believe it and do what you want to do, but understand that your rights end where my rights begin. So you can do what you want to, but don't try to force me to do what you think I should do because it's what you want to do. You get what I'm saying? I mean, stay in your lane. Do what you want to do, but stay in your lane. Don't get in our lane. Don't get in my lane. Don't get in, you know, if conservative wants to be conservative and not have to pay for, stuff they don't agree with, then they should have a right to do that. At any rate, I digress. So what we have is we had this leftist mindset really infiltrate everything. It's an infiltration, right? It's a slow incrementalism. As I stated, the gay marriage come out in the 70s, you get beat down. So what do? Over a period of time, right? Then they just want to come out. They just want to be accepted. They just want to be accepted like everybody else. That was their mantra, right? Just accept us in society like everybody else. Okay, sure, we'll do that. We don't necessarily agree with it, but we'll accept you on face value. Now what is it? No. Now it's not accept us. Now it's you're going to bake a cake for my gay wedding, and if you don't do it, we're going to sue you out of business so you can't have a business any longer. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's how it always ramps up, see? Once the camel gets the nose under the tent, forget about it. So it started out, we just want to be part of society and be accepted, right? We just don't want to get beat downs if we come out of the closet. We want to be protected so we can live our own lifestyle. And again, I don't really care what you do in the privacy of your home behind closed doors, as long as you're not molesting or harming children or beating women, then I don't really care what you do. I really don't care. I don't care what you do. I mean that. I don't care who you love, who you copulate with. That's up to you. That's not up to me. That's up to between you and God. But keep it in the bedroom. Heterosexuals don't walk around talking about their heterosexual escapades. At least anybody that's got any common sense don't. Nope, not the other side. They have parades where there's kids there, and they have people that, grown men that are naked walking around with, 4 or 5-year-old children there in the audience, and drag time story hour. How is this even going on? How is this even happening? Incrementalism. That's why, incrementalism. Because it happens a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. And now look where we're at in this country. Now look where we're at. Now they're making lists of conservatives. So if they get back into power, they can stomp us out and put an end to us. So we never challenge their power ever again. That's the thing that they crave more than anything is power. That's their motivation. And if you're a threat to their power, they're going to end you. And that's what they stated. So I sent them a message and told them to put my name at the very top of the list. When you start coming for people, come for me first. Please. I may be able to save a lot of other people some hassle. So that's what I say. All right. Let's look here at this. This is a story that I put out yesterday that I published. Montana Secretary of State Trump concede before votes counted. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. Our current Secretary of State, Corey Stapleton, who is really the organization here that is in charge of the voting, he puts this tweet out yesterday. I supported you, Mr. President. We, Montana, have supported you, and real Donald Trump accomplished some incredible things during your time in office. But that time is now over. Tip your hat, bite your lip, and congratulate Joe Biden. Blessings on you and your family. For real? The current Secretary of State, that's his tweet, I just copied and pasted it, is basically giving condolences to President Trump, President Trump, and congratulating Joe Biden for a fraudulent theft to this point of the presidency. It can't be described any other way. It can't be described any other way. They have tens of thousands of ballots now where only the president is marked in, just Joe Biden, and it's sent through. They have eyewitnesses now that they pulled up in, and I can't even believe they're this stupid. I guess they are. They have eyewitnesses now that saw in Vegas, I believe, they saw people pull up in Biden and Kamala Harris vans, logo vans, dropping off ballots and picking up ballots, totally outside the normal lawful practices of ballot, chain of command and these things that go on. And I'm not a ballot or a election supervisor, so I don't know exactly the intricacies. But someone from one of the two people that are in the competition pulling up in the van and grabbing the ballots and taking off or dropping off blank ones, that's not supposed to happen. I don't care what universe you're living in. This is not happening. Should not happen. So what happens when that all comes out? Now that they've got hundreds of thousands of ballots in other states that are in question. They weren't even checked. The signature wasn't even verified. They've already found like 25,000 people that are dead that have voted. Or roughly. So for Secretary of State Stapleton to come out and congratulate, and that's our next story, for Secretary of State Stapleton to come out and congratulate Joe Biden and tell Trump basically, you're out of here, your time is over. You think the man that ran elections would know the rules of elections. It really calls into question what's been going on there the last 4 years as the Secretary of State. If the guy doesn't know that this thing's been decided, this is all a fraud. It's all a total fraud. It's all a total and complete and utter fraud. It's a con. It's a trick. It's a ruse. This is what we're up against. But Secretary of State Stapleton sees it otherwise. So let's go over here to this next story here. And again, we're at MontanaDailyGazette.com. MontanaDailyGazette.com if you want to check out these articles. Gallatin County limits gatherings to 25 people, close businesses at 10 p.m. So they're limiting even worship events to 25 people. So let me ask you a question. Again, we're just going to ask you to try to think logically here on this show if you can, because that's the kind of way that I think anyway. I can't speak for everybody at Montana Daily Gazette, but I'm a logical kind of thinking guy. Riddle me this. If in certain parts of the country there are thousands and thousands of people that are getting together for Biden rallies, all crowding together, barely even 2 inches apart from each other and rubbing up against each other, and it's just a mass like everybody's in a sardine can. Do you think that they're really too concerned about the COVID thing with that going on? And where are the authorities? How come they're not breaking up those gatherings? You really can get together to celebrate a fraudulent and faked presidential victory, yet you can't go to church. Is anybody getting the idea that this is not this whole COVID-19? Now, here's the thing, folks. My view is, and I think it's going to come out, that the Democrats worked in concert with the Chinese Communist Party to release COVID-19 onto our population for two purposes. First of all, to damage Donald Trump, and second of all, to bring about mail-in voting, because they knew that they could pull off, they knew they had to pull off a big fraud. They knew they did. They could tell by the type of rallies Donald Trump was having. They could see his popularity. These people do internal polling too. They're not stupid, right? These polling organizations that you see, Frank Lutz, this other Nate Silver, all these things. These are all just fronts. These are front companies. These are operators. They're operators of the Democratic Party. That's what they do. Now, every single one of them, I don't know, but most all of them. And a report just came out a couple of years ago that no one ever talks about, where these polling companies admitted, with proof, with evidence, you look it up, they poll 30% more Democrats than they do Republicans. 30% more. And you wonder why the polls have a decidedly liberal lean to them, and they have a liberal slant? Yes, because they call 30% more liberals than they do Republicans. This is not a secret. They cold busted them on this a couple of years ago. I think I even reported on it. I think I did a show, and I brought up the article. Does that seem odd to you that they would call? I mean, what? There hasn't been any fair and honest elections, folks. And I'm not going to say your lifetime, but for many, many, many years. Since the age of electronics, let's say, and the age of hackers. Once they had computers and then they had hackers, forget about it. At that point, you're in the Wild West, folks. You're in the Wild West. And they say, well, these computers, these voting things are not attached to the internet. Oh, yes, they are. Yeah, if you watch that video that I told you about in the beginning of the show, they clearly show they took all the IP addresses, they took all the hops, they did all the forensic analysis. Oh, yeah, all this stuff's on the internet. All this stuff's on the internet. Not only is it on the internet, they share the keys to the back door to get in on the internet. And then they have programs that erase the tracks. So they literally can go in, hack into the back end of a voting system, grab a block of Trump votes, switch them over to Biden votes, back out of the system, and erase the fact that they were even there. It's true. It's true. Don't believe me. Again, don't believe anything I say. Look up everything I say. Look up this video. You can see it in real time. You can see the actual votes being changed in real time. Literally in real time. You understand they're caught. They're caught. All this stuff that you see, all this, they're already picking their cabinet and their members of who they're going to be, and they're trying to sell you the narrative. They think you're so stupid. Do you realize, do you have any idea the disdain that these people have for you? The absolute disdain. They loathe you. They hate you. They loathe you. The very breath that you take disturbs them. They do. They hate us all. We're useless eaters to these people. They move forward with these phony appointments and these events where everybody's driving a Jeep, a brand new one. And sometimes there's nobody even in them. They have all these events. They have these grandstand announcements of, this is my cabinet. This is going to be in the position. Folks, this is all a trick. It's all a con. Do you understand how much they hate you? They loathe you and they loathe me. Look how foolish they think you are. Look how stupid they think you are. They think that they're going to try to pull everything. And I should do a show. I probably will. Has anybody seen the list of things they came after Donald Trump for over the last 4 years? I mean, the P-Gate, the Stormy Daniels, the Russian hoax, the impeachment, over there, if there were Bidens over there, I can't remember not Yugoslavia, but I can't think of the name of the country. But all this hoax, right? All these hoaxes they tried to pull on Trump. And they've lost and failed at every one of them. Do you think we're imbeciles? You don't think that we know that they're going to try once again to do whatever they can to get Trump out of office? And is that if it comes to stealing votes, do you think that's going to be above them? No, of course not. Of course not. Turn off the mainstream media. If you're anxious about this and you're saying, man, I'm really nervous about Trump and if he's really going to take it, or he's not going to, he's going to get, is Biden going to come back at the end and win, or is this all going to get, turn off the TV, please. Turn off mainstream TV. They're not going to get the truth from them. Not even Fox News. If there's any conservatives out there watching this broadcast that still listen to this broadcast, that still watch Fox News, shame on you. Shame on you. What do they got to do? As soon as they hired Donna Brazile, the fraud that lied, that gave Hillary the questions before the debate, and then lied about it and said, I'm a Christian woman. I'm insulted. Did you see the interview? I'm insulted. I'm a Christian woman. I don't do that type of thing. Oh, yeah? No, yeah, she did do that type of thing, and she got busted doing it. The Christian woman got busted doing it. And then Fox hires her, and these conservative sheep continue to watch Fox News and wonder, I can't believe Fox News turned on us. They turned on us like 3 or 4 years ago. They've been your gatekeepers for the last 3 years. Do you see? Do you see how that works? They feed you. They think, oh, these conservatives are Fox people. So they feed you the line that it's still a globalist corporate line. It's just got a little bit of that Republican sweet sauce on it. That's what they hit you with, right? And then when it comes down to the time when it really counts, like right now, when all conservatives need to get behind President Trump, not only just for the integrity of the elections, but for the integrity and the continuity of this entire country. When that time comes, when the rubber meets the road, what do? They stab us in the back. They stab us in the back. They didn't stab me in the back. They didn't stab me in the back because I've been done with them for a long, long time. And I've even said so on my program numerous times. I've tried to tell people, don't watch Fox News. Don't watch Fox News. They are the gatekeepers for the right. It's all called programming, folks. Do you see it? It's all called programming. Do you know what kind of programming I have for this show? None. Zero. I don't go scripted. I don't write my program notes out beforehand. And nothing I do is scripted. I may have like the names of the guest and, some of the things they've done, right, just for reference. But I don't have any program notes or anything like this of my show or map everything out before the broadcast starts. No, this is all just totally, everything that I do is all just from the cuff, from the heart. I have no agenda other than freedom and liberty for folks. That's what I have. I want a government so small that I can barely see them. That's what I want. I want a smaller government. I want personal responsibilities. I want personal freedoms. I want religious liberties. And even I don't really. If you want to worship and date whoever you want, I mean, I'm not trying to stop you from doing that. I want you to have liberties in your relationships and everything you want to do. I'm not your judge. I'm not your judge. It needs to be a fair and level playing field all across the board for everyone, or it's never going to work. You see what happens? The educational system needs to be completely overhauled. Completely overhauled. Completely overhauled. I mean, it's a communist indoctrination center now. Not every college, not every campus, not every dorm room, not every classroom. But just look at the statistics of the professors that are liberal. They're self-admitted up to like 80 or 90 something percent, 96%. When asked if they're liberal or conservative, 96%, I believe, or close, stated that they identify themselves as liberals as opposed to conservatives. These are the people teaching your kids. You send your children away. You raise them up right. You give them Christian values, even if you don't, not Christian. The tenets of proper morals are based upon Christian values. So you teach them the morally right thing to do. You teach them to be good citizens. You teach them respect for elders. You teach them manners. And then you send them away to college. And they get ruined. Ruined. And then they hate you. Then they may not even come back the same gender that they did when they left. They get radicalized. And you know what? You pay for it. You pay for it. You pay to send your children away to get communist indoctrination at the colleges. Have you ever think about that, folks? I mean, have you ever just stopped for a minute and thought about that? You are literally paying for your children to be indoctrinated into an anti-American communist mindset. You write the check every month. Why would you do that? What? I mean, what happened to this country? What happened to people? What happened to common sense? What in the world has happened to common sense? It's gone. It's taken not the night off, taking the decade off. We got to get back to common sense in this country. And I said before, I mean, there's no mistake. There's no secret. I come from a conservative viewpoint on things. Right? I'm no liberal. I have a conservative view. That being said, I realize that we're not going to be able to get across and get together in this country and do anything great in this country if we don't find some common ground. We cannot keep coming at our problems from a mindset of how we can be different and how we can divide. We have to start coming and solving problems in ways that how can we come together and solve these issues? Generally speaking, these people that you hate, if you're on the other side, guys like me and others, we probably, believe it or not, with the exception of some of your political views, we probably have a lot of things more in common than we do and not in common. And when I say that, I think that no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think you want your children to grow up in a better world than you did and to be able to have all the opportunities possible for them to be able to live a happy and healthy and fruitful life. See, I think that's a point of commonality, right? And that's what we'll have to do. You say, well, I'm never going to get along with someone that hates me. And sure, they hate you now, because you have to understand, the people on the left and even people on the right, we've been propagandized and tricked and conned. All of us, every one of us, we're all common in that way. We all have that common thread that runs between every one of us. It doesn't care what side of the aisle you're on. We've all been guilty of being conned. By the left, by the right. I stated something on I sent a tweet out here a couple times, and it said something like this. I'm paraphrasing it. Every one of us, it doesn't matter what identity, what gender you identify with. It doesn't matter what part of the country you're from. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. We are all pawns in someone's game. Every one of us. Every one of us are all pawns in somebody's game. Somebody's game, right? This is the way that it is, and this is the way that it always has been. So if you think you have your answer is the correct one, and your way is the only way, it's not your way. It's not your way. It's the way that you've been programmed, right? Shouldn't your way be freedom and liberty and personal responsibility and a country that your children can grow up in and be safe and prosper in? Does that really have any political affiliation? That type of a that type of a mindset. Should it really matter what political persuasion you are? Don't you want what's best for your children? Does it matter? I mean, seriously, are you that brainwashed? Are you that dogged in your political persuasion that you take that over the overall health and safety of the nation and your posterity? I mean, what does it take? How bad does it get? Or how much have you been brainwashed for you to have that type of a mindset? Why would you do it? I just don't get it. I don't know, and perhaps I never will get it. But my point being in all this is, there's plenty of people out there that hate me. I'm sure of it. And others. I don't hate them. I don't like them destroying our country, and I don't like their value system. And if you harm children, and I will never deviate from this. If you knowingly harm children and traffic children, I just think you deserve to be put to death. Right? I really do. Publicly, hopefully. But other than that, if you're just a knucklehead out here, riding the streets and holding signs, and what are we going to do? We can't put everybody in jail. We can't lock up half the country. We got to have to come to some sort of a common ground here. Really. We're going to have to. If we're ever going to move forward as a country, we can't have people riding in cities, nonstop, pulling people out of cars, burning buildings down. Come on, folks. We know, I know, we all know. This can't continue to go on. It's got to stop. Where's it going to stop? I think if we just come to the point, if we can ever get on a common, to build, you have to have a foundation. To build anything worthwhile, you have to have a solid foundation, right? Not a builder, but anybody will tell you that. The solid foundation, I think, again, that we can all stand on and we can all agree with is it doesn't matter what political party you're from, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter what part of the country you're from, it doesn't matter what your socioeconomic class is, doesn't matter if you have a boat, 2 cars, big house, doesn't matter what college you went to. We can all agree, I think, we should be able to come to a common ground that we've all been conned by the elite, by our overlords. They've used us to battle each other. They've divided us. That's what they do. That's their game plan. You can see it happening and playing out. And once we're divided, once you and I aren't talking to each other because there's hate in our heart, that plays right into their plan. You are totally being duped. You're playing right into it. This is what we have to get to in this country, folks, where we come to a point where we can find some common ground, because there's some stuff that's going to be coming out. I've told my wife, if what I'm understanding, what I'm hearing is true, and it's not just what's coming from the Twitter or anything like that, I have other sources that are not published. If what I'm hearing is coming true, there's going to have to be a lot of healing and reconciliation in this country, because the stuff that's going to be coming out and it's going to be broadcast, if you choose to see it, is going to be some of the stuff that I told you that I can't even talk about on this show or my other critical disclosure show, because it's just so painful and it's so horrific that you can't even talk about it. All that information is going to be coming out soon. It's all going to be coming out soon. And to say that we're going to have a nation that's shocked is not even really it doesn't really fully describe it, folks. It doesn't fully describe it. I'm just going to say this as we get ready to close out the show here. It is, was, and will always be about the children. All this you see going on, all this trying to scam votes, all these lying, all this posturing, all this fake news, all the taking Trump down, the Russian dossier, the P document, the impeachment hoax, right? All of it, every bit of it, all of it is to protect the crimes they've committed against children. That's the currency that they trade in. These are the type of things that are going to be revealed sooner rather than later. Some people are going to, sadly, probably get to the point where they can't go on any longer. They just can't handle what has been going on, especially the children. And I can't even. I wish I could forget what I know. I wish I could forget what I know when it comes to that stuff, but sadly I cannot. So, in closing here, I just want to say, thanks so much for looking at here in the broadcast. We're going to continue to have guests here coming up as we go towards the legislative session. We'll have Commissioner Pinocci here on the show on Wednesday for the full 2 hours. Open up the phones. You can call in and talk to the good commissioner if you'd like and ask him questions, comments. He is going to lay out some of the things that he thinks that we need to do here now that we have the helm as Republicans here in the state of Montana, and all the major positions of authority pretty much are in Republican hands now. It's about damn time, if I can say so myself. We are going to take full advantage of this, at least the legislators I've talked to. And we are going to try to get some of these proposals, bills, legislation that we've tried to for so long. It looks like we may actually be within striking distance of getting those things passed. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be a part of that process, and I look forward to participating. We're just out of time here, folks. Thanks so much for looking in here on the broadcast. If you want to support this broadcast, you can go to northwestlibertynews.com. You see it right over my shoulder there, northwestlibertynews.com. Click on the Support Independent News button. You can support the sponsors that are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can go to montanadailygazette.com or montanagazetteradio.com. We so much appreciate you looking in here on the broadcast. Please join us tomorrow. I'll be back here again. I'm not sure what I'm going to be talking about now, but there's no shortage of news. I didn't even get close to covering everything on Montana Daily Gazette. There's a lot of news because I have been, as I stated, I've been sort of off here for the last few days with my recovering. So everything's fine now. Looking forward to moving ahead. Looking forward to a great 2021 legislative session. And looking forward to turning Montana back around and instilling some of those Montana values that that those of us that have been here in any period of time certainly know and love and appreciate. Thanks again for looking in. Appreciate your support. Appreciate my guest, Ed Butcher.
90 seconds.
That scared me. Senator Ed Butcher. Appreciate his participation in the program today. You can check out his website at legislatorloyalty.com. That's legislatorloyalty.com. northwestlibertynews.com. montanadailygazette.com. We are just running out of time here. And as soon as our gal here comes up with the 1 minute message, which will be coming up right now.
60 seconds.
Gotta get rid of that. If anybody knows how to get rid of that, please send me an email. Appreciate you looking in. That's all we got for today. Till next time, James White from Northwest Liberty News saying bye now.
10 seconds.